Let's see if see who all hops on here. Got one person so far. Let's see. What's up? What's up? I'm gonna wait for a few people to get on here before I start actually doing this thing. Let's go ahead and turn everything. There we go. 2 people. Feel free to say hello in the chat. All right. Hey, look at that. What's up, Matt? You were making my phone beep. What's up, Chip? How you doing? Well, we're up to 7 people. So while we're getting ready to get started here, the whole point behind this right here, again, is I'm going to be fixing some issues on bevels. And as we get more into it, I'll probably re-explain what we're doing depending on how many people hop on. But what I did here was I made this crazy double-sided blade thing with some normal issues that people tend to have. You know, let's say we accidentally touch the belt and screw up our bevels right there. Or let's say we take and we're trying to figure out why we can't get this area to match the front up there because of how we're using our pressure. Or this right here where we accidentally started going up higher there and we want to even out the bevel because our goal is to do a bevel like that. One that comes all the way up. It's nice and clean. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to show y'all how to actually correct that with your hands, with the 2x72, all that type of stuff. And one of the things to remember here, one, I typically edit the volume of my grinder whenever we're doing whenever I'm doing the editing of the videos. I tend to turn the volume of the grinder down. I can't do that on a YouTube live. So just be mindful of that when y'all are watching this. And you might have to turn your volume down while I'm grinding and then turn the volume back up whenever I'm talking because there's a chance that, yeah, I'm going to hurt your ears whenever I turn this on. Luckily, it's not that loud. I'll do a little test. So let's see how loud it is. Was that ridiculous? Was that too loud? Now let me know. Now, of course, when I start grinding, it's going to be a little bit louder than that, but it shouldn't be that bad. So, again, the goal here is really to kind of show people what to expect when it comes to how I'm going to be doing my live videos on the members side of YouTube. So people who come on and they join the actual channel and do the members of that, I'm going to be doing videos like this often where I'm doing not videos but lives like this where the people that are part of that members thing can say, hey, next week can you show how you would do this thing or how you would correct that? And that would be the focus for that live video for the next week. Also, the cool thing, it's not definitely not OnlyFans. So the cool thing about this is I can actually talk to y'all during it. So whenever we're actually doing this stuff, if you have a question during the actual process of me grinding this, just throw it in the comment section here and I can answer that. That's one of the cool things about doing these lives versus just doing a video and not really having that interaction. So you're going to have that with this. Now, I plan on doing the YouTube lives here and there on the main channel without doing the member section, but some of the more detailed things are going to be on the member section that I have. So if you want to join that, join that. underneath all the videos, there's like a little join button. You click on that, it gives you options to join and things like that. So you can go check that out. So whenever I start doing this, this is only my second live, so you're gonna have to bear with me here. Get y'all on this mount. So whenever I start doing this, I'm gonna be doing an angle like this. And then I'm also going to be doing an angle from the back side of the grinder. So whenever I am grinding the bevel that's on this side, I'm going to have to do it over here, but I'll be showing y'all how I'm going to correct it. Whenever I'm doing the other side, whenever I'm correcting issues like this right here, where this dips down at the plunge and where it's shallow at the plunge, y'all are going to get to see that from behind the platen, which is actually going to help y'all really see how it is. Now, the cool thing is these videos will be available for people to watch after this. So even if you don't feel like sitting here for the whole entire live, that's fine. Most of the people that are on right now are people that I talk to all the time anyways. So when it comes down to it, make sure that I'm in view here. So for correcting something like this happens whenever we go up to the belt and we're getting ready to come in and grind this, but we accidentally lose focus or lose concentration, and we accidentally hit that on the belt, and we just get a little blip in there. And some people will go, well, that's screwed. We can't use this blade because it messed up this area. Well, then we just want to go ahead and grind it up. Sometimes you just got to change the blade a little bit. And we can correct this by doing a higher grind like this right here. And basically what we're going to be doing to correct this, where you have that blip right there, we're going to be coming in and we're going to be what I would consider feathering it. But basically what we're trying to do is bring the bevels up, and we're not putting a bunch of pressure on the belt. But what we're not trying to do, we don't want to start and stop in this area. We want to either start at the plunge and pull through, or we want to start at the tip and push through. So we either want to pull through or push through. We want to make sure that we're bringing this area and this area up. And the ways that we do that, of course, we come in, pull back, and then on the tip, we pull the tang towards our body, and we put pressure towards that spine. So we're trying to bring the bevels up and correct this. And you're going to see what happens as I start going through here. We're just going to be skimming over this area. And this line is just going to keep working its way up and working its way up until it erases this dip, which is only really a dip in this main area right here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. Remember, this is going to be loud, so turn your volume down if you need to. I'm using a 60 grit belt right here to do this. This is a thinner blade. There's no need to use a 36 grit. This brand new 60 grit will eat through this steel super fast. So you're going to see, I'm going to show y'all as I'm working my way up what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be getting rid of that spot. So now one of the things that I've done here is I started bringing this line up. You see how we have this dip right here? That's because I'm focusing more on this area. In order to bring that section up, all we're going to do is just put more focus on the spine here. And we've already almost got rid of the actual indentation right there from that belt. So it barely comes down below the transition between the bevels and the flats. So we're almost out of it, but now we're going to start bringing this area up. And all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be focusing more on the tip. I'm not going to be going all the way back into the plunge. I'm going to be coming just through the tip here and making sure that I rocket the tang back to me as we're going through it. Just bringing it up. Now at this point right here, we've technically got rid of that indentation right there. So now all we got to do is just bring our transition line between the bevels and the flats up so that we have something more similar to that. So with this, the biggest trick to doing this freehand is always going to be getting yourself into a comfortable position, getting your elbows locked, and I'm primarily moving my body. Every once in a while, I'll move my hands just a little bit. If I'm trying to just get into a little area, I will take my wrist and I'll move it, but I'll have it resting on my belly, and I'll be rocking it like this, or I'll be moving like this. But either way, this arm stays where it's at. And that is what keeps you from dipping, from making issues where you're coming in contact in weird spots, because all you're doing is just letting that knife rest on your hand. And if I'm using a bigger knife, you'll see me sometimes come here or here, because I can just rest the blade on one of my fingers. But we're just coming through and we're grinding and we're making little adjustments. And that's the easiest way to make sure that you get nice, clean bevels as you're moving through, is staying stationary as you're doing it. Now we're going to go ahead and bring that line up the rest of the way and make it look like this one. And remember, all I'm doing whenever I'm bringing this up is I'm just putting more pressure towards the spine. And that's bringing the bevels up because I'm putting more pressure towards the spine. And I'm making sure that I'm not making the blade thinner while I'm doing that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to make the edge thinner. We're just trying to keep that edge where it's at, and we're just putting more and more pressure towards that spine. And we'll let that one be at that right there, where we got a nice straight transition between the bevels. So now we no longer have that little indentation right here. It's nice and even. Let's see here. I'm gonna read some of your stuff here. Well, thank you for that, Chip. Absolutely love that. So when it comes down to it, that's all we're trying to do there. Even things out. Now you could easily go through and hand sand this and fine tune it and do everything that you're going to do based off of where it's at right now. Or if we were going to go up to another belt, we could easily do that. But our plunge lines are even. If this was flipped onto the other side, it would match up. Now when it comes down to these two issues right here, which are a lot of people are going to have these issues right here, where they're kind of throwing their pressure off a little bit whenever they're actually grinding, where they're not getting a nice even transition between the bevels and the flats, or they do this thing right here where the plunge line area is higher than the actual bevels. Now I'm going to show y'all this from the other angle, so I'm going to move y'all around and put y'all down here. A lot of people tend to like this angle whenever I'm doing the videos. Hey, there's my chair. Okay, let's get y'all. That should work. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna flip y'all around so that I can actually see y'all, see what you type. There. Now I can see what y'all are saying about me while I'm doing this. I'm gonna tell y'all something. I am like dripping sweat here. It is spicy in the shop today. All right, so I see that y'all are just chatting. So when it comes to these issues right here, why people have these happen, we'll go ahead and talk about this one right here. Typically, whenever this happens, where that plunge line area is a lot higher than the main bevels, is because people are coming in here and they're getting to the belt and they're focusing too much time whenever they're coming into this area and then pulling. They're not going to the belt and moving, or they're not being able to come in and start towards the tip and feather in. They're always starting here and pulling, starting here and pulling, here, pulling. And what will happen is you spend too much time grinding that area, especially real quick, if I can find it in this mess of stuff. Here we are, right in front of me. So if someone's using a plunge line jig, what they tend to do I'm not going to use the plunge line jig for this, but what they tend to do whenever they're using a plunge line jig is they want to bump into this to start their bevels. They want to come in and they want to touch that and then go. Touch that and go. Touch that and go. You can come in here and grind from the tip back to this just as easy as you can go to here and back, because all the plunge line jig is for is to give you a even plunge. And I want to show y'all something. So I didn't do this on purpose or mark these. You can see where the plunge line is on that, right in front of this. Look at that. even without a plunge line jig. So when it comes down to this, you want to be able to get comfortable, especially if you're going to freehand grind. Let's see here. Hold on. This video, but my issue is come across grinding is trying to keep the transition from bevel to flat nice and straight. Okay, so we're actually going to talk about that whenever we're doing this one right here. I'll show you what that means here, or how we're going to do that, keep everything nice and straight. So going back into this, and this is going to actually help you with keeping everything straight. So a lot of people that are getting into knife making and they're newer with this, you got to get comfortable with going at the belt with your blade pretty much anywhere in the actual bevel area. You're not always going to start at your plunge and pull. That's not always going to be a thing. Whenever I'm correcting the things like we were doing on this side right here, and you can see we got a nice straight line in between here and there. Whenever you're doing that, sometimes you have to just focus on the tip, just the tip. Yeah. So sometimes you got to focus on that and feather it back into your plunge. Sometimes you're going to come at the grinder and you're not even going to go up to the plunge line area. You're going to spend the next couple of times that you're grinding just feathering it in. And you're going to see that whenever I'm doing this, because I'm not going to be coming back to this. I'm going to be just focusing on this area and bringing that up. There we go. So I'm just going to be focusing on this area here and bringing it up to meet this. You're going to see what I'm talking about here. Again, remember, this is all in the hips. If you're watching me do this, I'm just doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not dancing. It's like golf. I don't play golf, but it's like golf. You're just swiveling. That's all you're doing. So you're going to see that we're starting to come up on there. And we're getting closer to this area. And I have not ground. You can still see where there's like surface rust right here. I have not ground in this area at all. All I'm doing is bringing from here forward up to meet that. And once we've met it, then we can move the whole entire bevel at once. So all we're trying to do is bring this transition line up to this. So this is where we start to, what I call feathering. We're going to start pulling it into this area. And what I mean by that is we're going to come over here and we're going to grind into it. We're going to put more pressure on the area that we've been grinding and less pressure at that plunge line. So as we're about to meet that plunge line, we're barely putting any pressure on that area, and we're just letting the belt do its job. But as we pull back across, we're going to start putting pressure back on the blade towards the spine, and that's going to feather it. So we're putting more pressure all the way through until we get to about right there. So until we get about right where you can see that transition, and then we're going to let off, and we're going to just let the belt do its job, almost no pressure. And then we're going to put pressure back to no pressure, pressure as we pull through. You can see here, we're now grinding all the way back to the plunge line here. But we're doing light pressure, and we're just going to bring that line all together right there. But you see how we have a nice clean line at that transition between the bevels and the flats. We just want to bring that up until it matches this by just being consistent again with our body movements, paying attention to where the blade's sitting, and just moving it back and forth. You're not doing this stuff, you're not doing that, you're just moving your hips. Just like that, letting the belt do its job. So right there, we're almost up to it right here. On this next couple of passes, that transition between this bevel, that area right there is going to disappear. So this grit on this belt, this is a new 60 grit. So because this is a smaller, thinner blade, there's no need. Like, I could use a 36 grit, but that's going to remove material ridiculously fast. For this, you don't need a 36 grit. For a blade this size and that thin, you use a 60 grit and it will remove it super fast. So if I wasn't showing the demonstration on this, I could grind the bevels on a knife that has about a 2.5, 3-inch blade, both sides, in like 5 minutes. And that is complete, both sides, 60 grit, ready to go to the next belt with a 60 grit. So I won't always use a 36 on a lot of the thinner stuff. I'll use something that's like a 60 grit or something like that. Just because having to remove 36 grit grinding lines off of a blade this thin, you remove a lot of material going to the next belt, the next belt, the next belt, hand sanding in that process, and you end up thinning out everything and losing material. So 60 grits, all we need for this. Like I said, On this next couple of passes, this right here will be nice and even, and we'll put a nice even transition between the bevels and the flats. So now that is gone. We got nice, clean, consistent bevels on there. And all we've used is a 60 grit belt. So now we can start going up to the other belts if we want to. That's a good grind for a drop point. You don't have to go full flat or anything like that. You can really just pick and choose how you want this to transition. And I'm going to tell you, the trick to have those really, really, really insanely crisp lines between your flats and your bevels is whenever you're going through and you're going to be using your steel, make sure you grind your steel flat. You can always come in after you do this and get a magnet, come in with your belt and grind on the flats like that, and that will clean up the flats. But you can get nice clean lines by using a firm backer on your sanding. So I use a sanding stick like this. I've actually got Kyle Daly, he's sending me a couple of my Carta versions of this. So taken, and whenever you're hand sanding, you hand sand those lines real crisp. So hand sand your flats, hand sand your bevels, and get that line to come up nice and even, because you can focus on it whenever you're hand sanding and fine tune a few things. But for me, whenever I'm doing this, you want those nice clean transitions. It is all about having this consistent motion right here. It's all about, yes, yep, it's developing a constant motion through muscle memory, moving as a machine, easy with practice. Yes, that's exactly it. I have ground hundreds of knives. So hundreds of knives, hundreds of bevels. It's all about practice, but it's all about what your body's doing, getting used to a motion and coming through and doing it. What makes jigs, bevel jigs, plunge line jigs, all that stuff handy and makes it easy on you is the fact that it makes you consistent. So use a bevel jig, it's making it consistent because it's taking the body element out of it for you. Whenever you want to start freehanding, you got to get used to that motion, and you become the machine. You become the work rest. You become all of that. And speaking of work rest, if you want to have consistent ones, one of the things that Tyrell over at Dennis Tyrell at Tyrell Knife Works, he takes his work rests, he puts it on there, and he sets his spine on the actual work rest, and he just moves it like this. You don't need a bevel jig, plunge line jig, nothing. Just come up, move across, just like that. This keeps you from dipping and rocking. So all you gotta do is come up and move. And you're just moving side to side on this. If you want a vertical plunge line, like you do on a buoy or a bowie, however you want to say it, I say buoy because I've got a town about 20 minutes from here. It's called buoy, spelled the same, grew up saying it. So if you want a vertical one, sit your spine on there, pull across. If you want an angled one, sit it here, pull it across. And it keeps you from dipping. Once you get used to it, you don't need to do that. Once you get used to the practice of just moving your body like this, it's easy. And then Jason, something that helped me was putting a marker. Yep. Yes, so that's one of the reasons why. So I ended up flattening this on here, but what it did was it made everything shiny. It made everything shiny. So you wouldn't see as much of a transition between the bevels and the flats. So what I did was I tossed this in the forge and I let it build up a little bit of forge scale, and it gave me the lines. I only put it in there for long enough for it to give me a little bit of forge scale and let it cool. And that's all I did. But you can use black paint. You can use marker. The reason why I would use a layout die or a black paint over a Sharpie is whenever you start getting this on here, whenever you start using your hands on here and you're using a Sharpie, you'll erase the Sharpie and it'll get all over your hands. As you're dipping it in the water and you're moving it around, the Sharpie will come off and you'll lose your lines. What I like to focus on is I get it to where it's consistent, and then I'll come in with, my shop is in all kinds of disarray right now. Wherever my calipers are, there's calipers in here. They're in this area because I don't have my toolboxes in here yet. But I'll come in with my calipers and I'll set it to the main section right here. I'll set the calipers to that. And then what I'll do, I'll lock it in. And then as I'm grinding the other side, all I got to do is pick it up, scribe a little mark with my caliper, and it will give me that line that I need to grind up to. And if that line goes away, all I got to do is take my caliper and scribe it again. And I'm just checking with the caliper on the main section, which is this section right here. These right here, you can go ahead and do that, but sometimes you're going to have an area like this or like this where this height right here doesn't match here, or this overall doesn't match. If you want to do bevels to where you can set your calipers and scribe it and it gives you an even line, that's cool. But for me, I do a lot of funky stuff, and I hardly ever can just take my calipers and just scribe a line all the way down the blade and it be the same thing all the way through, especially if I'm doing a brute to forge knife or something like that. There's going to be all kinds of funky characteristics that mess with you a little bit. I am just lucky enough that I can do a lot of this stuff by eye. I've been able to do that for a very long time, and it makes it a lot easier on me. Not everybody's going to be able to do everything by eye. So use your tools. Use your calipers, use markers, use scribes, use all that stuff. And all you're going to do is remember that what you're grinding to on a 36, what's the shop tip? Like 105 right now, 106. So if you're grinding on your first belt, let's say we wanted to do that, bring the bevels up that far. You're not going to go up that high on your first belt. If you're grinding with a 36 grit belt, whatever line you scribe, when you're grinding that first belt, you need to go shallow of that line, because you've got to do another belt, hand sand, and whenever you're doing all that, you're having to get rid of grinding lines, and you're coming up and you're shaping, you're grinding, you're profiling, you're doing all that stuff. You're removing material every single time you do that. So if you've got a specific width that you want your flat to be, just make sure that on your first belt, you don't go up to that width, because you're going to start moving past that as you switch up belts and do all that stuff. So The reason why that's important is, let's say you wanted to do a full flat grind or something like that. You want to do a full flat grind, so you take your 36 grit belt, you grind, you go all the way up to the spine. From that point forward, when you're getting rid of those grinding lines, you're going to start stepping down your spine. So what's going to happen is your ricasso area is going to be wider than the actual spine of your blade. So you want to make sure that you leave room for all that for going up in grits and getting rid of grinding lines. Okay, so we got rid of the area where we had brought up the plunge here. And then we wanted to go ahead and even this up. Let's say we do the reverse of that. Let's say we just can't get past this right here. Let's say we're doing this, we're coming into it, and we keep grinding, and for some reason, we just can't bring our plunge line up to make it meet this, and this bevel just keeps getting higher and higher and higher, and then you end up with this thing that's like Scandi ground here and full flat ground up towards the tip. A lot of that happens because people are afraid to come in and spend that time at the plunge line. So they're not putting enough pressure here to actually bring that up. So all we got to do to correct that is the reverse of when we did this one. So we're coming in here, we're doing light pressure on the tip, and we're putting more pressure on the spine as we're getting into the plunge. So light pressure on the tip, more pressure on the plunge towards that spine. And as we put that pressure towards the spine, it's just going to bring this bevel up and up and up and up to actually even out. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this match this. And all we're going to do, like I said, is focus on this area here. We're going to make those two bevels match. We're going to turn the grinder on, turn your speakers down if you need to. So we kind of started getting everything to where it's even. So we just made it to where this area is brought up and we have a similar distance from the edge to the flats all the way through the tip. Now we want to get it to where it looks like this. All we're going to do that is keep focusing on putting pressure towards the spine. But now, since we have that even, we can put pressure evenly towards the spine through the whole pull. And then one of the things that we're going to be doing, if you look at this distance here, between here and here, and there, all we want to do is just make sure that we are, again, pulling that tang a little bit to us as we pull through that tip. And that's going to thin out this front area a little bit and bring that up. I'm doing right now, because the front is actually pretty much where I need it to be, I'm focusing more here to bring this up just a little bit more. And then it'll be similar to that. And by focusing on that, I mean, again, I'm putting more pressure towards the spine right there where we end into that plunge line. So now I'm going to show you a little trick real quick. We want to get everything nice and even here. Look at how bent that still is right there in the center. So flatten everything, and then come in here and even everything up. So we flattened all that, and this is the reason why I blackened it with the forge so you can actually see it. But now, when you look at this, it dips. You look at that, it dips. So all we gotta do is come in and clean that up and make them match better. up with that. And again, all it is just being consistent. And it's not very hard to get that crisp transition line there. It's just, again, just being consistent with what you're going to do. And let's say you, again, let's say you bring it up too high and you went through and you started with your first belt and you brought it up too high, and then your blade where your spine is thinner than your flats. Well, in order to correct that, all you got to do is just come in and grind flat on there and bring your flats where your ricasso is. Let's say your ricasso's thicker than your blade. You can always grind this flat and create flats again. So if this was all the way up to the spine, but you wanted it to have that transition, just come in here with the magnet, put it on there, hit it with the belt. You'll create flats again, and then you can just come in and clean up and get a nice clean transition line. If you're working with really, really, really thin steel, you're not going to be able to do that very much, but even on steel that is that thin, less than 1/8 of an inch, I'm still able to go through, mess with it, flatten it, and then make everything even and consistent. And all it is just taking your time, letting the belt put in the work. I'm never going to come in here and just stick this on the belt and shove into it. I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to come in here, and even if I'm hogging off material, I just go to a different belt. That's all you got to do. You shouldn't be shoving this thing into here. If you're having to do that, it's because you're not using the right belt. If you were using a 36 grit belt, you're just going to go as fast as that 36 grit belt lets you work. If you're doing a 60 grit belt, you're only going to go as fast as that 60 grit belt lets you work. You putting a ton of pressure into it, all that's going to do is burn your thumb, burn your fingers, because you're still going to get hot super quick, and it's going to start burning off your fingerprints. So let the belt do its job. Come in here, take your time, make sure everything is nice and clean and even. Get yourself nice, even plunges, so where that flows in real well with each other. By taking your time and letting the machine, the belt do its work. And remember, I'm doing all of this with a 3-speed belt system. So I don't have a VFD. My machine has fast, really fast, and get out of the way because it's going to blow your face off. It's ridiculous. I tend to work on the medium to high speed on pretty much everything. But yeah, if you got VFDs, y'all are lucky. I will have one soon. But again, hopefully this was helpful. Trying to show y'all how to do this. I was not expecting this to be an hour-long live. So some people are going to get a really cool video because y'all will be able to watch this for years to come. The lives stay on the channel. So hopefully y'all enjoy that. If you do, let me know. Guys, it's really, really hot out here. I'm going to go inside and eat some dinner. Y'all have an amazing time. I'll catch y'all next time. See y'all.